All right, here we are at the final boss battle, and you'll be making a single page resume website. But for this whole thing, we're going to do this following a design process, right? And the truth is, design doesn't just come out of thin air. Someone doesn't just sit down, pop open some software, and create a design. That is just not how a professional web or graphic designer works. So we're going to use this framework right here: definition, research and ideation, conceptualization and analysis, and then production ultimately, right? Production being that you'll put together your website with either Webflow, the visual coder, or just code it on your own, which you can use Bootstrap or not use Bootstrap. Really depends on how you want to challenge yourself. So our first phase here is definition, defining what it is we're doing, defining what are the objectives of this project. And I've already told you that we are going to make a single page resume website. Another thing that definition will do is we actually get the content together. So what kind of content does this project need? A lot of times in graphic design, web design, also a designer will say, a client comes and says, oh, I want a brochure. The real truth is you don't just go, sure, I'll give you a brochure. You have to actually figure out, is that really what they need? You need to figure out what is the problem they're trying to solve instead of just delivering whatever. Of course, we're not working that way. We're working with just, this is what you're going to do, okay? So again, the most important thing I can tell you of being a designer is that always, always, always you should have content first and then apply the design second, because the design should enhance the messaging and content. So let's take a look at our sheet here and just see our definitions and everything that's happening here. So again, the final boss battle is a final assessment of all you learned in class. We're going to make a single page resume/portfolio site, right? It's going to kind of handle it all. And so what are you going to need to have in this? Well, you're going to need a navigation system that jump links to the section it relates to. Don't forget that navigation system is likely going to have to change between phone sized and desktop size. So this is a responsive website, okay? So an image and typography driven hero area that introduces yourself, right? So again, in Studio 2, you made something and there was this hero area. You're gonna do largely the similar thing. It's kind of a common pattern in web design, right? To have this thing that kind of is your first message when someone hits you. It's kind of the thing above the fold, we call it. Even though there's no technical fold in website because you never really know. I mean, you can use things like vertical units to understand what a person sees when they first come to your website. You're going to need an area with your education and work experience, right? So this is kind of like your resume type thing, right? Kind of what have you done? What do you know? Right? So that's pretty simple. You're going to need a visual portfolio of your work in a grid-based layout. So a grid-based layout doesn't mean CSS grid, because if you remember, we didn't learn CSS grid that much. But what I mean by grid is you could use rows and columns, right? Different ways that you can form grids. Yeah, that's what you're going to need there. Then I want you to come up with your own section, right? Because this is your website. So maybe you want to talk about your skills, you want to add some blog or something. I don't know, just something that you'd show your employer on your website. And lastly, you're going to have a footer area that has a contact form. So you're going to have to make a form, and it's going to have your social media links with icons, right? So I could click on those and get to your various things of social media. And then just a little copyright down at the bottom that should say 2020. I guess I forgot to update that. Obviously, this has to be responsive, right? So you're going to plan. You're going to see as we go through the pieces that you put together, you're going to design at 1200 pixels and at 375 pixels. But now, while you're doing it, you're going to make sure that the normal tablet size looks pretty solid as well. So that's something you'll kind of do in situ as you're doing it. Obviously, you're going to need links, buttons, navigation needs hover styles. So, right, we're trying to, again, use everything that we've learned. And your navigation, I talked to this right in the beginning. I probably should move that to that. But when you get to mobile, it should be a hamburger icon. And when it's on desktop, I would like you to have it as text that I can click that's omnipresent, right? So that it has that change over. Okay. So we're going through right now the definition deliverables, right? And these are the things that you need to hand into Icon. When I say a deliverable, it means you'll actually hand in something to Icon. And so you're going to have to first, again, get your written content. I don't want you just flipping it up and just thinking you're going to come up with it on the fly. Absolutely not. That always adds for bad design. So you're going to have to go ahead and, using the area above as figuring it out, write all the content that's actually going to appear on your website. So for your hero area, right, you might want to come up with, I don't know, some elevator pitch of you. Like for me, I'd say maybe creative who codes, or data visualization and emerging media specialist, or something like that, right? Or you could just be like, hi, I'm Kevin Ripka, right? It depends on what you're going for up there. Next, you're also going to have to gather some images for your portfolio section, right? So you need no less than 6 images in the portfolio section. Now, the portfolio section can be as simple as card design, where you have like the image and then some text underneath it, or it could just be the image itself. And it says right here, bonus points if you use a Lightbox JavaScript plugin, so each enlarges when it's clicked, right? So that's one of those things where you click on an image and it comes up bigger. You could always do something like that if you want to take the challenge to do that. I'm not sure if Webflow does that. It probably does, I'd imagine. Okay, let's go back to our presentation here. So again, I already went over these definition deliverables. So the next phase is research and ideation. And again, we don't just design in a bubble. We don't just come out of thin air and bring up everything. All good designers spend some time researching and getting like ideas for where they'll go with the ultimate design. And so things we do in the research and ideation stage are research the current styles, look at current competitors and similar projects, right? So I'll give you a litany of links on today's page to look at, to kind of go through some resume pages that I've found. You'll research, appropriate elements and styles, right? What kind of things do people have? Oh, do you want a map for some reason? Is there, you know what I mean? You're just looking through what other people have done, coming up with ideas. Then you sit down and you brainstorm. You just look through all these things. What do I want to do? Can I come up with something different that I didn't see that I want to solve, right? These are the kind of things you do, right? And you go back and to your definition deliverable, write your content, and you'll make note of what content you're going to make, right? So you have to, after you come up with new things, you should finish off the content. So what are we going to do for research and ideation deliverables? Well, let's do it on the sheet rather than through here. You're going to come up with a competitive analysis or inspiration, right? So you're going to find 5 websites that you like, take a full page screenshot of each's homepage, right? So I believe for Which Mission Hijacked, I had you install the, Fireshot. If you don't have Fireshot Chrome plugin installed, you can install it now. Just Google Fireshot Chrome extension. There's other ones too that will take the whole page, and just take a whole page of the person's screenshot, and then you compile that into one document. So you could just add that, take all those PDFs or whatever and put them together, or even just zip them in one folder. I don't care. I would also suggest that as you're doing that, perhaps you should think about taking the photo of not just the desktop, but how it looks on mobile, right? So if you go to, let's just say I have this page, one of my pages open, right? And remember, we turn into the responsive area. If I bring this down and see how it has the hamburger, now Fireshot will take a photo of it in this state, and then, of course, do it again in the desktop state. Okay, so that's something that I would suggest you do. And then you're going to do a mood board. And so a mood board is meant for you to start developing the style that you want to have, but you'll do it from other websites. So you're not coming up with these things on your own. You're just looking for things you like a lot as you go through these different websites. So you could even start using some of these ones from here. And you can just screenshot just the small part. So if I hit Option Shift 4, or Command Shift 4, where is it? There it is. See, my cursor becomes this little thing, and I can just drag over the part I wanted to take a photo of, right? And it takes this little photo. And so what are you looking for? You might want to get some colors that you like, or like a whole color scheme if you see it, all together. Looking for fonts that you really like, or any element that you really like. Navigation systems, whole sections of websites, textures that you like, any design techniques and styles. Some images that you like the style of, and icons or illustrations that you like the style of, right? So you should have at least 3 to 5 images you like the style of to kind of give you a sense of what types of images you like. You should also do 3 to 5 icons or illustrations that you like the style of in this. So there'll be these, and there's all this to choose from. So you need 25 things total for you to kind of put together. And I would just put this in like a slide deck or a Word document or Google Doc. It doesn't really matter to me. How you do it, it's just for you to have a lot of elements that you think can inform your own design. Because you're like, yes, I really like bold, chunky serifed fonts or something, right? And I like this color scheme or this color scheme. And these, you're not in any way tied to these because you can explore beyond them. But they're starting to develop a sense for you of what style you gravitate to. Are you more modern? Are you more grungy? Are you more flat colored? Do you like deep gradients? I don't know. What is it, do you think, that aesthetically symbolizes you and that you'll use that for your resume, right? Is it very clean and professional and pulled back? Or is it really bold and full of dynamic movement, right? That's the questions that you're kind of exploring in the mood board. Okay. So conceptualization analysis, right? This is where you start really actually visually designing and figuring it out how your ultimate layout and your design styles are going to end up. So this is where you're just trying to make design choices and you're assessing them as you do it, right? This is a loop. This is not just like you do it and you're done. You're kind of going through and being like, well, do I like this? What if I move this over here? What if I change this style a little bit that way, right? And so we are going to, for this, do a couple things. So you are going to actually create 2 tile styles where you'll explore choice of color, contrast, and typography, and I'll show that in a second. So this is in a couple stages, actually, these deliverables. And then you're going to actually create a lo-fi wireframe. So let's actually, instead of going to the sheet, let's look at this stuff now. Let me stay in presentation mode. So I'm going to actually give you a downloadable file, an Adobe XD file that actually has these in them right now. So you could just use them as templates and then change the things you want to change. The one thing I don't want is for you to have a completely white background. That doesn't mean that you won't have a white background for maybe part of your website, because you can. But I want you to explore basically what are some color schemes you think you could have that go together. How would you handle the typography, both in the main background color and an accent background color, right? So the accent background color could have been white here, but I chose to make it green. And looking at the relationships of the size of type, styles of, say, text links when they hover, and how they look when they're not hovered. Your main body copy, what style it would be, right? H1 and H2. Your button styles and their hover, right? Are they squared? Are they rounded? This is just a simple exploration of you now synthesizing from those mood boards. What kind of style do you think you could use as an overarching style? It doesn't mean you can't break some of this, right? Because this might be a size of like a section header for this H1, but on your hero, maybe your text is going to be way bigger, right? But it might be this exact font, right? Because we don't want to mix too many fonts, right? As far as typefaces, you should never really mix more than 2, possibly 3 typefaces on a page, but you can use a lot more fonts. And the difference between a font and a typeface is the style of the font. So this is Roboto, right? But a font is any expression then of that design. So Roboto Condensed Bold is a font. Roboto Regular Bold is a different font than that, right? Because condensed is a thing. Then instead of bold, there's italic, there's regular, there's just all these things. That's all a font. A font is basically a typeface in some style, with some stylistic choices made on it besides the overarching design behind it. So that's some stuff there. As far as the wireframe is concerned, a wireframe is just simply a blueprint, but it's what we're doing is making a lo-fi wireframe. And so it's a really pulled back blueprint. If you notice, there's no readable text on any of these. Really, what's happening is we're just kind of blocking out our website to see what it looks like, to see how we're going to lay it out. And knowing the content we have, what content is going where, about how much it is, you don't have to actually write it out, right? For images, right, we usually just put an X through. Even these circles would be images, right? So I'd probably put an X through these to show that they're images. If there's an icon, right, you don't have to use the actual icon. You just use a little circle or something with an X through it to note it's an icon. Buttons can be this, right? We don't have to make a lot of choices other than how the system lays out, right? And so just making sure that we have this in our thing here, right? So here's our deliverable, style ties. Create at least 2 style tiles with our provided template, right? So you see here all the things that you need to have, right? And they're already all there, so that should be easy. Right, lo-fi wireframe, you can block out your website. Now the class after this one is about using Adobe XD. If you want to, you could use Adobe XD to create these wireframes. I do it a lot. However, I also have been using all these programs a lot longer and I'm quicker. It might be way easier for you to draw and redraw and erase and things like that. Probably because somehow once you get on a computer, it feels more real to most people who are, in the beginning stages, whereas I'm willing to put time on a computer and then just throw it completely out. I don't get stuck on it. But a lot of people will, if they have it on the computer, it feels more real and they're like, well, this is the way it's going to be. And like, no, this needs to be a stage where you're able to quickly iterate and throw away things. So that's why I probably recommend that you do it by hand and then just, take a picture of your wireframe. Okay? So the next part of this design system, where's present, is to actually mock up your website, right? And a mock-up is different than your wireframe because it's the actual visual expression of your website. A mock-up will look exactly as the website is that you are going to build. And so the thing to know about is that there's still wiggle room from your wireframe, right? Because sometimes in the wireframe you didn't account for enough space because you're not using the real content. You might have to change it slightly. But for the most part, your mock-up should look exactly like your wireframe. And I also forgot to mention your wireframe, and I'll update this sheet. You need to wireframe both the desktop version and the smartphone version, right? So you'll have to have two different wireframes because you'll have to solve, well, when something's three columns on the desktop, what happens to it in mobile, right? So that's the thing we're going to do. And then the mock-up, you take those, right? And so that's why it should also be there. And I'll fix this before you get to this, right? You're going to mock up both a 1200 pixel design and a 375 pixel design using Adobe XD. And like I said, next class will be all about just how to use Adobe XD. And then after that, you're going ahead and going through this design process and creating your website. And I want you, a tight feedback loop. I know things are weird because we're not in class, so I can't give you feedback right the same kind of way. But as you finish things, feel free to reach out to me and be like, hey, what do you think of this? Any suggestions, any tips, right? Because if I don't hear from you, I don't know where you are on the stage. Again, we're working kind of asynchronous. You're going to have dates that you have to have these things due by, and I'll try to look through them and get feedback because by that point in the class, I should have all of my online materials recorded, and I can really put my focus just on grading and giving student feedback. But just in case something happens, like even I get sick or something, right? We just want to keep going this way. So the last thing you're going to do, obviously, for our design is to create your website, right? And that's where you, if you have chosen code, right, you'll go ahead and code it from scratch or using Bootstrap as a nice, helpful starting point. And then if you're on Webflow, you can go ahead and use Webflow. So I'm going to add a bunch of websites for you to kind of look through after you're done with this, watching this video. And so I just want to point out, like, as you're looking at things, you should be coming up with, how do you lay out certain things? And there's lots of different design patterns out there. But we're going to be largely using a design pattern where we have what are called sections, right? Kind of these rows of content as you go down with these 5 sections. And so you can actually wind up using a lot of these different things in a different section. So like splitting the screen means just, split the section in half. The hero cover, right, you're going to have no matter what. So maybe you'll start with the hero cover and then go to a split screen and then maybe go to a 3-column feature list or one of these the Z pattern feature list, right? Maybe you'll do a simple grid. So these are full layouts. You probably won't do those, right? But, equal height modules. So these are all the things you'll identify, layout patterns you'll identify going forward as you do your research, as you look at the materials I gave you. The last thing I want to talk about is pacing on a website, right? And so it's really key to have a well-paced website rather than a website where you're just doing the same thing over and over, right? This is really boring. If we had everything that kind of laid out in these modules, this would get really boring. So you want to have a lot of contrast between sections and kind of respite. So notice here, like this has this color background and then this goes white and then this has this split screen and then it's white again, or you could have used another color, right? So the whole point here is for you to, contrast each section. Let a person know that they're in a new section, right? That doesn't mean you couldn't add another section right here that's white, but then I would make sure I use a different color section here, right? But it would be nice to kind of keep a pacing where you have a lot of, even the amount of information between, like, right, your hero may just have nothing more than, hey, I'm Kevin. And then here you'd have like your features, like your skills list or something, right? Or your portfolio, where there's a lot more information to go through on this section than this section. That's about the pacing, right? We don't want someone to be bored with the monotony of going over and over again to the same looking section, because then they don't differentiate in their mind. We want a different amount of information in each section. Some are quick hits. Some are things for them to lounge around in a little longer, right? That's one of the keys to making a really nice single page website, right? Because we're going to have it all on this long single page. Another thing, and I don't have a slide for this, is I want you to pay attention to what navigation systems you're going to use. You could have a fixed left nav if you really wanted to. That still has the hamburger on that. I have a whole list on today's webpage of some examples of the navigation systems. I want you to give that some thought. I'm fine with just the normal top navigation, but maybe you should make it fixed up top. Maybe you want to go a step further and get some, make it sticky or make it change on being sticky. There's all different things. Like I've seen websites where the hero's here and the navigation is right below the hero, but as soon as I scroll up the web page, it sticks on top. That's something really cool. And if you needed help on how to get that finished, I could always help you. So again, this is Boss Battle, the final Boss Battle. I want you to use everything we've talked about. Come up with your own website and just do your best, right? This is an exercise, right? This isn't something that you necessarily needs to be in the real world, but I am going to have you put it on your website for now just to make sure you still remember how to put things up on websites and make sure they work, right? So ask me any questions you have. And that's it. That is an introduction to our final boss battle.